I was in the funeral business, my car knew where all the cemeteries were. So now it knows where all the churches are. So anyway, that's a good thing. So I'd like to just introduce myself real quick. I'm Brad Whinery. I'm a retired funeral director. And then after I retired as a funeral director, I became a part-time preacher, and I preach at small congregations. Part of my, mission in life is the Tanzania missions. I just had the opportunity to go to Tanzania. That I just came back. It's my 14th trip to Tanzania. And to give you an idea of what that means, I've been there 14 times. It's 9,000 miles each way. So I went over 250,000 miles in air travel. I just wish I'd had those bonus points in the first 10 years. I didn't do that, and I really wish I had now. But anyhow, I just got back with my grandson, and we have time. We'll actually get to see some of those pictures. I want to talk about Tanzania as a whole, as the missions as a whole. I fell in love with Tanzania on my first trip in 2008. Fell in love with the people that were involved in Tanzania. It's actually it's under the oversight of the Hoover Church of Christ. Hoover, Alabama Church of Christ has taken over the oversight. It's their eldership that takes care of it. In conjunction with the Bear Valley School of Preaching in Denver, we have a school there, and they actually are in charge of the school and getting the teachers and so forth on that. Tanzania mission started in the early 60s with, up there in the top left is Andrew Conley. Some of you may know Andrew Conley. He's a Texan. And he went in the early 60s. He left from Galveston, Texas on a freight ship with all his family. It was full of cattle and everything else. Took him a couple of months to get to Tanganyika, is what it was called back then, Tanganyika. And he started what we know today as Tanzania Missions. He established the Chamala Mission, which is still there today. It's got a hospital and a lot of stuff. It's on the very far east side of Tanzania. But by the time he came back, he had understood that to really evangelize Tanzania, you're going to have to get to some of the bigger cities. Of course, the Chamala Mission is near Dar es Salaam, and we'll talk about Dar es Salaam here in just a minute. It's one of the larger cities on the East Coast. But there's a couple other cities called Moshi and Arusha. Moshi you may know because it is at the foot of Kilimanjaro. Everybody knows Kilimanjaro. It's the largest mountain in Tanzania. We have people flying over there. I'm on airplanes with those people there flying over there to climb that thing. When I was in my 50s and I first started going, I thought, man, I might ought to try that. I'm in my 60s and heart problems, and no way am I going to try that. But Andrew Conley came in contact with a young man by the name of Cy Stafford. He's in the bottom right-hand corner. Cy was a student at the Brown Trail School of Preaching, and they got to talking about Tanzania, and Andrew got Cy to take he and his 3 boys and his wife to Tanzania for 3 years. Cy fell in love with Tanzania. He came back, and he was going to the Hattiesburg, Mississippi Church of Christ, and he came up with this idea. He said, I think in 20 years we could do a lot of good. And Cy went back and started establishing some things we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Of course, most of you know Andrew Conley passed away several years ago. We lost Cy in 2016 from leukemia. They think it was a product. He would get malaria while he was in Tanzania, and they think that may have brought on his leukemia. Today, our director of Tanzania Mission is Daniel Gaines. Daniel's a young man, as you can see. Daniel and his wife, Tiffany, are both graduates of Freed-Hardeman University. Their daughter to the right there, their oldest daughter, is also, she just graduated in May from Freed-Hardeman. So they're extremely active. They actually went over and they stayed 3 years as missionaries in Tanzania. During that time, Josiah, the one on the far left, started having seizures. And so Tiffany, and she brought Josiah, and of course Levi, they couldn't get the medical care they needed there. They came home. Daniel stayed in Tanzania. He came home to get them home, find out what's wrong, and then he went back and completed his 3 years without his family. So that gives you the kind of commitment that he has. Daniel's now on what we call the Northwest Trek. He would leave his family. They live in Pig, Kentucky. I know, I wrote that down one time, and so one of my ladies' churches, he doesn't live in Pig, Kentucky. There's not a Pig, there is a Pig, Kentucky. So he lives It's outside of Bowling Green, but he'd leave for weeks on end to go around to like churches at Wellington and stuff like that and give presentations. And then he'd drive all the way back home to Kentucky. And he thought, if I just got me a pickup truck and a travel trailer, load my family up, I can just go from church to church to church. And that's what he's doing. He's doing the Northwest Trek, and they're going through, and of course, having some great time with his family. But he's also every Sunday night, and every Wednesday, he's got a place to share the gospel with. But Daniel's our director now. He goes to Tanzania about 4 times a year, spends anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 weeks at a time, taking care of what needs to be taken care of over there. A lot of people will look at Africa and just look at it as one country. And when you look at Africa, Africa's really big. The continent of Africa has 54 countries in it. And in fact, as you can see there, and I hope you can see on that picture there, you can fit the United States, Spain, France, Germany, Europe, Eastern Europe, India, China, Japan, and the United Kingdom in the continent of Africa. Tells you how big the country of Africa is and why we're all trying to get there to try to save those that are lost. A lot of people will ask, well, where is Tanzania? Tanzania is kind of in the southeast corner. It's on the eastern coast. It's slightly larger than twice the size of California, to kind of give you an idea of the area there. Of course, I've already told you that it's the home of Kilimanjaro, the highest point in Africa, and it's bordered by 3 of the largest lakes in the world. It's Lake Victoria. You may have heard about that. It's the world's 2nd largest freshwater lake in the north. Lake Tanganyika is the 2nd deepest freshwater lake in the world, and it's in the west side, and then Lake Nyasa is in the southwest. So it's a beautiful country, and then you have all the safaris that you're able to take in. There's several places to go in Tanzania. A lot of people, I don't know how well that you can see that, ask, well, how do you get there? Well, you can't get there from here. I'm just going to tell you that up front. It's 9,000 miles. The least amount of time I've spent in an airplane in an airport going is 24 hours. Just got back, Aiden and I just came back, 32 hours to get back home. But I'm showing this. This is just some snapshots from in my seat this last trip of how we got there. You would think they would have a straight shot from Amsterdam down to Tanzania, but because of the war in Sudan, they can't fly over Sudan, so we're having to go in and around. And coming back, we actually go back to the northeast and go over the Red Sea, fly in between Egypt and Israel, which was a little hairy, you think about that a little bit, and then you go back. But that's what it takes to get to Tanzania. So you leave the United States, go somewhere on the East Coast, Atlanta, Washington, New York. We flew out of Minneapolis this year. Last year we flew out of Boston. Go to Amsterdam into Kilimanjaro. So again, it's a long trek to get there. This is one statistic that a lot of people don't realize. 90% of the gospel preachers are preaching to 312 million people. And what I'm telling you is 97% of our gospel preachers are in America. 3% of our gospel preachers are preaching to the other 6.9 billion people of the world. How important is missions? Is extremely important. It doesn't make any difference where you go. And I'm not going to underplay missions. The mission field is your next door neighbor. Okay? So I'm not underplaying that at all. I'm just saying there's a lot of people out there that we need to get to. Currently in Tanzania, these are some figures that I heard this year while I was over there. There are 4 births to 1 death in Tanzania right now. They're predicting by the end of the century that Tanzania alone will be the 8th most populated nation in the world. And Dar es Salaam will be the 3rd largest city in the world. And we're talking about New York, Los Angeles, all those big cities that you think about it. So there's a lot of people. It's amazing when you drive. The airport that you land, Kilimanjaro Airport, is in between Moshi and Arusha. And when you land there, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's like landing in a big airport in Wellington, Texas. I'll just tell you how that's kind of like it is. And you start driving down the road, and it just seems like there are millions of people along the road. They're just coming out everywhere. It's unbelievable what the country's like today. The original goes when Cy set up and he came up with the idea of PZ 2000 was, he says, what we need to do is we need to teach the Africans to teach Africans. We don't need to be, it's expensive to send Americans over there. We still do that because we need they need that constant reinforcement, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But he said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And he was talking to the elders at Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is a church not much bigger than Elk City. Just being honest with you, it's about 250 members. They raised over $300,000 in the year 2000 to put this thing together. But he said, what I want to do is form 2 Bible schools, one in Arusha and one in Moshi, and then I want to establish the Andrew Conley School of Preaching. We need to teach the Africans to become Africans. And he said, my goal in 20 years is to establish 50 congregations and 500 Christians. Now, that sounds pretty good. I mean, year 2000, that's a pretty good goal. So they said, hey, that's a good idea. That's great. I'm going to back up just a minute. You're saying, what's the difference between a Bible school and a preaching school? Okay. Preaching school, the preacher students come in for 2 years, just like they do here at Brown Trail or Bear Valley. They live at the school for 2 years. They go home on holidays and stuff like that, but they live there and get their education. The Bible schools are smaller classes that are given after people get off work, and they'll come for a couple of hours after they get off work, and that's a 2-year program, and they get a certificate. It's big education to get. Education is big in Tanzania, obviously, and to get any kind of certificate or anything like that is a big deal. And they work for 2 years going after school to these Bible schools to get that certificate. I haven't heard lately, but at one time we were able to say that not one person has graduated from the Bible school not being a Christian. So that's a pretty good goal in itself. Over the 20-year period, we hit 20 years in 2020. We know of at least 500 new congregations. Remember, the goal was 50. Now, but they had over 500 new congregations, and that's a good estimate. We don't know for fact, but not only in Tanzania, but congregations have been established in Kenya, Uganda, Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo. I also found out this week that Burundi, there's a new congregation in Burundi. So we're expanding out. That we're teaching the Tanzanians to teach themselves. The average, when we graduate a preacher out of the School of Preaching, he'll establish 2 to 3 congregations after he gets back home. He's come from his home congregation. He's going to go back, get them, and they're going to go out and establish 2 to 3 more congregations. So we really don't have a clue exactly how many congregations are out there. We just know of at least 500. And of course, there are thousands of new Christians. Instead of 500, there are thousands with an S, and maybe tens of thousands. We're not for sure in those separate other countries. But through the Bible schools, preaching schools, and Safari for Souls, and that's what we call when I go over, and when I was over there this year, they had a group from Freed Hardeman there. We had a couple from Kentucky that was there. We call it Safari for Souls. That's kind of what we go over there for. And we know well over, I did this about 2 years ago, and I put 1 million. Guys, it's millions have been preached the gospel. You have to understand, one of our biggest tools over there are brochures. And I'm not talking a fancy, I'm talking a white piece of paper that's been copied on a copier, the 5 steps to salvation. Every time we hand out a brochure, you won't find it on the ground because it'll be read 7 to 10 times before it's ever destroyed. So that kind of gives you an eye. So I'm saying millions have been shared the gospel of Jesus Christ through the years, that 24 years that we've been going. That 1 million, I think maybe even the Elk City Church, we've been going over this far, and all the brochures that we've handed out, maybe we've hit 1 million people. We don't know. It's just, that's one of those things only God knows, and I'm good with that. Understand? So we're good with that.
We have a teaching school at Bible Trail. Do you know where that is?
Where's that?
It's in the other end of Texas.
Okay.
And they teach the Mexican people how to teach their people.
Yeah.
It's mostly Southern Baptists, but they live there, like you would talk to them. They live there, and then we have brothers in this country.
Well, teaching schools and Bible schools are great things to have. Whether you have them here or whether you have it over there, it works. So what is the mission of the Tanzania in Tanzania. What is our mission? Well, the first mission is preacher training. And we know from 2 Timothy 2:2 that we have to have preachers out there. The second thing is our mission is for edification. Even though we get preachers preached, we get them through the Bible schools, or you get them through the preaching school, they need further education, and we're there for that. We know Ephesians 4:11-12 says, and he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds and teachers to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. We need to keep equipping those people with the material they need and stuff like that. Next, benevolence. Benevolence is a big part of what Hoover does. You're going to see that in some of the things I tell you how you can be involved in the work of missions. Benevolence is one of it. When I was there this year, they've had a lot of rains. The spring rains brought a lot of rains. And you think, well, that's a good thing. It ruined their corn crop, or what we call maize over there, ungala. It's just, for me, I've tasted it. It's white paste. It's what it is. But that's their staple, and it comes from corn. They mash up corn and make ungala. Used to, when we're over there, sometimes we'll see 2, 3, 4, 5 years of corn on a stalk. This year there were one. They're predicting a famine this year. There might be a time that we might need to send some money over there to buy some rice or have some corn shipped in for our preachers and their families. And then evangelism. Of course, Matthew 28, we know that the Great Commission is go therefore into all the world and teach the gospel. So that's our four main thing. Of course, the main that we are into right now is preacher training, because they listen to their own. I think sometimes when we have people come in here, like Brad Whinery, he says, well, he didn't know what he's talking about. He didn't know us. So we try to train Tanzanians being Tanzanians. So we have a preacher school, and it's called the Andrew Conley School of Preaching. This is it right there. Kind of give you an idea. There's 2 buildings to the left-hand side there, those long buildings, those dormitories. Each door that you see there, they're bunk beds. So each will take 2 students. Of course, we don't fill those up. We're not filling those up. It's kind of like our preacher schools here. We're not filling our preacher schools here up either. So we can't say too much about that. But when we bring in, they have a huge leadership conference each October there at the school. It's called the Tanzania Leadership Conference. All those countries I talked about come in. Hundreds of preachers will travel for days to get to it, to get it further education. They'll stay in those rooms. We'll fill that whole thing up. In the front section there is the kitchen area. Of course, the students are staying there, so they got to feed them. So that's part of the process. Is we have a kitchen area there that we have women that come in and that will cook the beans and rice and gala and whatever we have for them at that time. And then on the back side of that is, of course, the classrooms and offices that we have for the school itself. I've already introduced Daniel to you, but the 2 men to the left is Imadiwe Kamaro and Charles Hebert. They were in one of the first classes to go through the Andrew Conley School of Preaching. They are now the directors of the school. They teach the Swahili class. They actually have 2 classes now. When the school first started, they only taught in English. So you could not go to the Andrew Conley School of Preaching when it started in 2020 unless you knew English, because we only had English-speaking teachers. Today, because of Imadiwe and Charles, they know, obviously they grew up there, they know some key Swahili, and we have 1 class in English and we have 1 class in Swahili. So we're actually got two runs of people, and sometimes they know really good English and sometimes they don't. So they have the key Swahili class. Charles there in the middle, I know he doesn't look like it. He's kind of like me. He likes to eat. He was on the Tanzania national soccer team. So he's kind of a famous people in some circles. To kind of give you an idea, for the past 20 years since the school was established, they've had 256 graduates. They've had 34 complete the master's program. I told you that the Bear Valley School of Preaching is part of this. They have 62 schools around the world. Very few of them have master's program. Andrew Conley is one of those 62 that has a master's program. And they're bringing these guys in, and of course, you know what that does. Once they get their master's, then they can teach and come back and teach, and we're able to get more students in. One of the newer things that came in around 2000, and after Cy passed away in 2016, there's been about 2020. One of Cy's goal was to build a school of leadership. the churches in Dar es Salaam, since they've been around since the 60s, there's a couple of churches, they have elders. No one else in Tanzania have elders in their churches. We need to do that probably in America now a little bit more, because we have a lot of churches in America that don't have elders. But they're bringing these young men into the leadership school, and they're teaching them how to be good deacons and elders. What does it mean to be a leader in the church today? What do we need to do? And so we built this building here to help encourage getting more elders and deacons over there. And it's a different society, guys. I mean, to rise up and to be a leader in that setting is pretty uncommon, and it's hard to get them to do that. But I've been asked recently. My wife and I will be traveling to New Zealand in January, and they've asked me to teach some classes on elderships, because in New Zealand they don't have elders, and they're trying to get their churches in New Zealand to become elders. So it's not just Africa. There's a lot of places that come, but the South Africa, they have a lot of different camps, a lot of bit of seminars, like I told you, the leadership seminar they have in October. All these hundreds of preachers come in, and they have a lot of different opportunities to study. Here's just a class of preacher students that they have that come in, and they study every day. So what's our goal with the school right now is sustainability. We want to get it where at some point in time, we can step out, that they won't need money from America. Now, I don't know how quick that's going to be, but part of that is the cost of running the school, because it's not cheap to run a school. I don't know what it costs for a brown trail to put a student through there, but I'm thinking it's probably $25,000 to $30,000 a year to put a student through Brown Trail or Bear Valley or Memphis School of Preaching. It's a lot more expensive than what you think. But one of the overall costs is sustainability. Electricity is owned by the government, and it's really unreliable. You might have it, you might not have it. You might have it for a week or two or a month, and you might go out for a week or two or a month. So we have installed some solar systems there. Solar is big over there, so we've installed solar system. They have a lot of sun, so we've done that. That has helped quite a bit. The school had 20 acres. They bought 20 acres when they put that in, and we've turned a lot of the area around the school into farming land. And you're going to see a little bit of that here in just a minute. I've got a picture of that. And water is important. Of course, we're in Africa, and water is important. We tried drilling a well there on our 20 acres, and it was brackish. It wouldn't even grow what we was trying to grow. So we were able to find a piece of land about a mile away that had and we drilled a good well there. And then the Burns Flat Church of Christ in Burns Flat, Oklahoma, paid for the water line 1 mile, hand dug all the way into the school. So we now have water, and of course the water is run by the government. It's also, there's a problem with water. You might not have water because all the Maasai just, they get to travel wherever they want to. There's no fences. They travel with their cattle, their sheep, and their goats, and whatever. If they get somewhere and they need water and they know where that water line is, they just dig right down, break the water line, and water their cattle. So you lose water when that happens. And then the government's got to find the hole and fix it. So sometimes you don't have water. So sustainability is a big thing. Part of the farming operation at the top left there is we grow maize, and you'll see a picture of that here in a little bit. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But we also do something else. We're teaching our preacher students. It's required of them to work the farm, because when they go home, we want them to know how to grow things. We want them to be able to grow crops. Because they may go home, they don't have any income coming in, and this helps feed their families. They don't use fertilizer a lot, so we are teaching them how to use fertilizer, how to use drip irrigation. Water's important. How about drip irrigation? We teach them how to use drip irrigation. Bottom right is a chicken house. It's a big deal in Tanzania for chickens. That Arusha, Kisongo area that we're in is heavily with expats. The United Nations has a big complex there. They do tribunals of war crimes there. And so chicken's a big deal for a lot of the people living there. So we're trying to raise chickens, fryer chickens, so they can feed the students some meat, and they can also we can also sell it and make money for the school. So it's just kind of a two-edged sword. Here's a maize crop they brought in. This was a very good year. They had enough maize for actually support the school for 3 years here on this one. They used to have to shuck the maize by hand. Somebody in America bought them a shucker and a tractor. So now they were able to do that. And that's how they dry the corn. They just lay it out on big old things like that, move it around until it all dries out. You'll see the little hill of shucks in the very back. They don't throw that away. They add a little molasses. We've taught them how to put a little molasses to the shucks, and they'll actually feed that to the few cows that they have there at the school. And, of course, that's one way they get their milk for the school. One of my favorite pictures is this. I took this actually last year. This was we were out up on Mount Meru. That's at the foot of Arusha's at the foot of Mount Meru. We were up on Mount Meru at a new congregation called Laramie. It was a church that was established because we converted a denominational preacher, and we established a church up there. On the far left, you're going to see she's a Mexican, and she married a Tanzanian who was in America, in Maryland, and her two children were baptized that day. She's in the girls in black and the little boys in the red in the back. They were baptized that day. So here we have a Mexican national married a Tanzanian man, has American children living on Mount Meru. That's what you're into. Sometimes you just get into all that. That was one fine day. We had 6 baptisms that one day. And if you look at that baptistry, that's what we call a portable baptistry. We take it around, and you can either walk to the river, which you're going to see here in a few minutes, or you can do a portable baptistry. And we did a portable baptistry up there on that day. So where are we at? I mean, when you talk about Tanzania, where are we at? Well, Romans 10:15 tells us, let me find it here on my Bible here, and how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. We can't go and do the things that we go relying on money from Tanzania. The average wage in Tanzania is $127, and that's including the most highest paid person and the lowest paid person. The unemployment's over 10%. And I don't even believe that, because I've been there, and most people, what they earn today, they eat on tomorrow with. So it's not as good as what that even sounds. But we have the lost out there. We have the church in America and the missionary standing in between, and he can't get his job done unless it's supported by us. It's going to be honest with you. So we have one missionary over there now, Noel Stafford. You might remember Cy Stafford. Noel is his son. He went to Chamala Mission with his dad when he's real little, and he's back with his wife, Jessica. Her parents were missionaries to Russia, so she knows the mission field. And of course, all their children went over there with them. Their oldest daughter to the right, she just graduated high school and is headed to Freed-Hardeman. They're here getting her set up at Freed-Hardeman. They work with the Kilimanjaro Church of Christ in Moshi. Again, it's for helping that church grow. So what are the needs and the opportunities that each church that I talk to have? Well, the first need that we have is your prayers. Everything can be done with prayers, right? We work through the providence of God in our lives. And if you'll pray, that's the best thing that you can do for us. The next thing is that, well, it takes money. And I hate to talk about money, but we just got to talk about money. We have what we call a general fund. This takes care of all the expenses, the general expenses of the school. We're trying to shift this a little bit, but a lot of people will say, you put $10 up there. Why'd you put $10? $10 is 2 gallons of gas. That could save us all. Of course, general fund always needs money. And general fund, people like to give to certain things, and the general fund says, well, I don't know where my money's going. Well, it's going for good. Let me tell you that. The next thing you can do, you can actually support another missionary. Hoover has decided that Noel and Jessica are on the east side of their area they work. They need somebody on the west side in the Arusha, Kisongo area. They have gone and looked at Todd and Susan Storks. Todd and Susan have already been to Tanzania. They've been there. They were there for 3 years with their daughter and son-in-law and son working. Todd is actually preached in the Georgia, Alabama area. He was known for planting churches. He didn't want to get to one church and just stay. He'd go out and start another church, and then he'd go there and he'd help them, and he'd go plant another church. And he did that in Tanzania, and he's extremely successful. So they went back to Todd and Susan and said, can you go back and help us on the western side. They have agreed. Todd, talked to Todd yesterday. He's raising his funds, trying to, of course, you got to raise your funds to go. And he's out raising his funds. He's in the Georgia area trying to raise funds. That's where they're from, and that's where they can get most of their money, they think. But the Hoover Church of Christ has empowered, or have asked them to do three things. We want you to get them to be self-reliant. When you go in and you talk to churches and you talk to members, we want you to help empower them to be self-reliant, to operate on their own. We want you to trust by example. Hey, that was the best way for people to learn is by somebody going out there and showing them how to do it and being an example for them. So that's what they're trying to do there. And they're going to energize the church by planning and their leadership that they provide. They are just a wonderful couple. So I brought some packets, their packets they sent me here for the eldership to look at. Again, $10 is 2 gallons of gas. My grandson and I were there for a week doing a safari for souls, 200 gallons or $200 in gas alone, just for a week. That's a lot of money. The next thing is we need church buildings. I'll be honest with you, when I first started going in 2008, I was dead set not to build buildings. I'm not going to do that. We're just going to go preach the gospel. That's all we're going to do. That's all God told us to do. The problem you have is the society over there, and this is what the first year taught me, because if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times. If you don't have your own building, you're not really a church. And it's just a mindset. We all know that. The church is not the building, is it? It's the people, right? We all know that. But in the mindset in Tanzania, because there's so many denominations and they're building these huge Mongol buildings over there, we don't build big buildings, you can see, for $6,600. It's enough for about 35 to 40 members. That's the average congregation. There's no use building anything. And it runs $6,600 to build one building with a baptistry and a cho. A cho is a bathroom. They're important. But anyway, it's $6,600. We have actually had a family that says, look, we will provide the funds for two if you'll raise the funds for the other two. So that's what I'm out doing. I'm raising money for two buildings. So we're trying to raise $13,200, and we've already got the congregations that need the church buildings identified. One of the things that we do, we just don't go in and build a building. It's got to be an established congregation. They've got to be meeting, even though it's in a rented building. They've been meeting, and then they have to buy the land or get the land provided. It's just not a freebie. They've got to come up, and for them to buy land is a big deal. Average contribution probably in a church in Tanzania is 100,000 shillings. Divide that by 2,600. That's what $1 is. So you're talking about what, $25 to $50 a month maybe. So they've got to come up with the money to buy the land, so they do that. So that's one of the things that we're trying to raise is $13,200 right now. And you'll be a part of raising, 4 church buildings. And for those 4 church buildings, you got 4 preachers. 4 preachers are going to go out. They're going to find 3 more areas to plant churches. You're going to have 12 for 4. You see what I'm saying? It just grows and grows and grows. A preacher student. We used to say it was $2,400 a year, and we did up to just a short period of time ago. And that sounds pretty good, $2,400. But like I said, you want it costs to go to Brown Trail for them to provide. It's probably $20,000 or $30,000 a student for somebody to go to Brown Trail, because you got to pay salaries and you got to pay all the utilities and all the stuff that goes along with it. So we've actually rated, if you want to provide a full coverage for a preacher student, it's about $6,000 a year. That's really going to do away with the general fund. That's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to raise money for. So a preacher student's about $6,000 a year. Do you have to do a full $6,000? No. You can do $10 a month. You can do $50 a month. You can do $100. It doesn't make any difference. You're going to put a student out there, and have you ever thought about it? For $6,000, you can put somebody out there that's going to plant 3 more churches. You ever thought about that? I always wondered, when you teach the Bible, that you're going to have the opportunity to come up and, you're going to teach somebody who's going to be a Neil Stidham and be able to go out and save other people. There's a lot of people out there. If you want to support a preacher, I told you the average salary is $127. If you're working, if you got a job, it's $127 a week. we roughly pay the preachers. Elk City supports $150 a month is what we try to provide. So that kind of gives you an idea. Most of the people in Tanzania, they work for food. They work today what they're going to eat tomorrow. And then we're having a legacy fund. You know, I told one of the biggest goals is sustainability. We're trying to raise funds. We're trying to raise $1 million. And the interest from that fund will keep things going at school. Going real quickly, I've got just a few more minutes here that I want to do, and I'll be here after church. So if anybody has any questions, you can get me after church. If you want to get on the mailing list with the Tanzania Missions, if you write on a card your name and your email address, I'll get you on that list, and you can start getting emails once a month. And if you get tired of them, you can always just delete them or send them to trash. My grandson, I have 3 grandsons, older grandsons, and I told them if once you're a senior, I'll take you to Africa, a week of missions and a week of safari. So I'm going to go through these pretty quick. My grandson there on the left is Aiden. Aiden has a full ride to go to Oklahoma Christian College. He's getting ready to go. We went over there and we worked in a little church called Whinery. Whinery's on the south side. His dad actually went with me about 10 years ago, and we worked there, so he got to work with his dad. That's what the whole goal is. They didn't have a baptistry, so we had to walk about 1.5 miles to the river, and we were right after the spring rain, so all the stuff's coming off Meru, and we go to the river and it's deep enough. Sometimes we have to dam it up and make a little baptistry in the river. Here we are, we've come back, and this is during lunch period. I took this picture of Aiden there on top left. He's doing a little Bible class right before lunch. Lunch was around 1:30, by the way. This little girl to the right, her parents are Christians, her brothers are Christians, her other brother is not. He's denominational, and she was actually taking us to her sister-in-law. And her sister-in-law wanted to be baptized once we studied with her, but she said, I've got to ask my husband. That's never a good sign. This was the end of the day. One of the church members brought in 5 of his buddies, ages 17 to 20, and there on top left, we're having a Bible study at the end of the day. And how can you not love the one on the right? I mean, come on, ladies. How can you not love that? They asked what kind of food we eat. Breakfast and supper is pretty good because we get to pick where we go. When we're out in the field on the left, it's beans and rice. On Monday, on Tuesday, it's rice and beans. It just depends which one they put on top. Sometimes they'll put a little green. You see that little red there on the left-hand side? That's called pili pili. That's hot sauce. On the right was on Sunday. It was a big day for the Sunday, so we had it was kind of a stew, and that piece of meat looks really good in that picture. That was just a piece of gristles, all that was. And if any of y'all have seen pictures or gone to Old Mexico and you've seen the beef hanging in, yeah, that's where they get it at. So I'll go on. Top left, a toy is a 5-gallon bucket lid nailed to a stick. On the bottom left, I'm out doing Bible studies. We're behind a dukkha. It's a kind of convenience store. And she's frying mandazi, and we're having a Bible study with her. She fries her mandazi and does that. Aiden doing a Bible study in the center. And then at the end of the week, we go back to the church, and on Sunday I preached, and Aiden actually taught our class. You kind of wonder about roads. This kind of gives you an idea of the roads, and you can see sometimes you got to pull off the road, let the cows go by. So that happens all the time. And when we're going to the baptism there, you can see the kind of bridges we go over. This is another road that was in town that we went in one day. The second Sunday we were there, we went to a place called Usa River. That's spelled USA. You can see that. And it's called Usa River. And we preached there. That's one of the oldest churches in Tanzania. That building was probably built 30 years ago. It's having dire troubles, and we're trying to raise the money so that building doesn't fall down right now. I love the picture on the right. I'm speaking English, and you can probably having a hard time understanding me. You can imagine the translator. He's looking at me like, "What did you say, and how am I going to translate that?" Because it doesn't always translate into Tanzanian in Swahili. That week, I don't know why I'm hitting the button too much. Second week, Aiden taught a kids class. That was early in the class. By the time he got done, there was probably 30 kids in that class. They just keep coming up from outside. I promised them 1 week of missions, 1 week of safari. So then we go on safari. We go to the first crater. We went to Ngorongoro Crater, which is a perfect ecosystem. It's a volcano that has collapsed. And then we went on to the Serengeti, and we were able to view the Serengeti. It was during the migration of the wildebeest and the zebras. That was wonderful. It was a National Geographic moment. It was really wonderful. To see God's world. If you're going to go that far, you got to see what God's created, you know. And then we did camping. We did tent camping in the Serengeti. As you can see on the top right picture, my wife says glamping, not camping. So anyway, it was pretty nice. The last night we were there, all the wildebeest were circled our camp. Elephants, the first night, went right by in front of us. About 5 o'clock in the morning, there was a lion kill outside somewhere. We could hear the lion kill one of the wildebeest. Asante Sana, it's Kiswahilis for thank you very much for your time this morning. I'll be in the back after church this morning if you have any questions. Thank you.